Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. I hope you had a great weekend. It's been rather chilly around here in the evenings. Macro thoughts. Look at this. International tourism to the US is down by double digits. This is four square, and this is really the bleeding edge of Trump policies, I think. US 3-month yields are at 8-year highs heading into this week's FOMC. The market sees a 99% chance of a hike to 100 to 125 basis points. Now, my issue with all of this is this. The currency has fallen quite considerably in this intervening period, which has effectively loosened conditions. And I think if the Fed takes cognizance of that, it might mean that the interest rate assumptions that are being made, that it's just this one and one more before the end of the year, might be off the mark. Stay braced for 2 more Federal Reserve rate hikes in 2017, say economists, and I'm just pointing out substantially looser financial market conditions, which might lead the Fed to look at that situation again. This photograph from Faith Kanja, sundowner at Samburu Game Reserve, made me book this weekend in the Samburu. Hannah and I are looking forward to leaving on Friday from Wilson Airport. I wrote about Wilson Airport and I called it something like a magic portal to another world. And I was referring to a book, The Flintries of Thika, and I said I did not take the ox cart as she did and her family did, but an aeroplane from Wilson. The airport was once located on the outskirts of Nairobi, but today it is in the city. It is very retro and has a style from a bygone era, which is to be treasured in this 21st century of ours. I find Wilson Airport like a magic portal to another world. I started following Moby Dick at Sea, and I must say the quotations from that book seem strangely apposite. I found Queequeg's arm thrown over me in the most loving and affectionate manner. You had almost thought I'd been his wife. This is a tattooed and enormous fellow. That one night, our hero ends up spending the night in the same bed. Lamu Sunsets. This is from Peter Size 10. Beautiful photograph. And then I like this, a man floating away in a man-made sail near the Diani Beach. And, I fancy floating away on the sea, don't you? David Yarrow, footloose, never managed to get something like this before. Lucky, especially given the position of the other Ellie, life on Earth, and you can even see the hair on the elephant's leg in that photograph. I put up this photograph first, Doha from the sky. I was in Doha several times, and this was one of the occasions when I was leaving and I took a photograph. And my piece over the weekend was a toss-up between Kenya Airways, writing about the current proposed deal, which is egregious, or Qatar. So I thought I'd write about Qatar. It was a sort of top of mind. The piece is called Rolling Over Qatar. Global market volatility continues to plumb new lows and is in complete contrast to geopolitical volatility, which has become seriously whiplash. The youthquake in the United Kingdom, the arrival of the geopolitical wizard Emmanuel Macron on the world stage in what looks like a tectonic political shift in France, and so much more. The latest development concerns the state of Qatar and its erstwhile GCC band of brothers. Egypt is also a part of the lynch mob, where Qatar finds itself blockaded and under siege, its airline cut off from Middle Eastern airspace. One can imagine the Deputy Crown Prince MBS's trigger finger is real itchy, and he is thinking, let's just roll the tanks into Doha. Robert Fisk recalls, when I asked his father Sheikh Hamad later uncharitably deposed by Tamim why he didn't kick the Americans out of Qatar, he replied, "Because if I did, my Arab brothers would invade me." Qatar is a tiny little emirate, but this tiny emirate has parlayed its gas reserves into a meaningful global position. With less than 300,000 actual Qatari citizens, the state has beamed Al Jazeera into billions of homes and exercised mind-boggling soft power. Joe Nye coined the term soft power, defining it simply as the ability to get what you want through attraction rather than coercion or payments. Bloomberg Gadfly spoke to whenever a crisis hits the West, the pint-sized yet deep-pocketed nation of Qatar sails into view with the promise of cash lifeboats. I imagine that the hardcore wing of the GCC is looking at ways to get these trophy Qatari assets disgorged at fire sale prices. Harrods is a good example. Qatar has also played an outsized hard power role. In fact, in October 2011, Qatar's chief of staff even admitted that Doha was serving as the link between NATO and rebel forces. Qatar was a big promoter of the Muslim Brotherhood, as was Erdogan, and the Turkish president is apparently ready to send his military to Doha, and has all sorts of political ne'er-do-wells holed up in Doha, ostensibly for reasons of promoting dialogue. Of course, Qatar has also been a supporter of Hamas and the increased alignment between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Israel. President Trump's flight from Riyadh to Israel was the first direct flight between those two countries. Also confirms Bibi would like to skin the Qatari cat. Returning to the Riyadh summit, where the kingdom committed 1/5 of its remaining FX reserves, which will fall off a cliff when oil slumps towards $32 a barrel, to a purchase of beautiful American arms, speaks to a heist. The House of Saud's protector has always been the US, but this time an American president has excelled himself at extracting a mind-bogglingly egregious price. I have to surmise that the Emir of Qatar balked at the price and that his adversaries are saying, okay, we can always do it by force, because this looks like a mugging in a dark alley now. It has been reported that there have been 2 recent phone calls between Emir Tamim Al Thani and President Hassan Rouhani, both of which were supposed to have called for stronger ties than ever before. This possible realignment of Qatar called it hedging, and we're surely going to find out the value of these hedges over the next few days. Towards the resistance axis of Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah might well have been the straw that broke the GCC camel's back. Tiny Qatar needs all its wits about it now because it's in a fight up against some monster egos. Put up a photograph of the Emir of Qatar and President Ashraf Ghani that I took at the Doha Forum, a link to a piece I wrote in May 2016 after that Doha Forum when I spoke about Qatar punching beyond its size. A piece from August 2011, Soft Power and Al Jazeera in Qatar. We've learned that Qatar's enlisted US lobbyists hires former Bush Attorney General Ashcroft to lead the lobbying effort and combat a negative image. And then a very interesting piece in RT, Cool Qatar, Riyadh plan backfires after Trump flip-flop and Turkey ruse. Saudi Arabia's standoff against Qatar was fraught with miscalculations and comically ill-conceived notions from the start, but now the crisis is becoming a threat to Riyadh's own prominence and security in the Middle East. Almost all relationships begin and continue as mutual forms of exploitation, a mental or physical barter to be determined when one or both parties run out of goods. That's W.H. Auden. This Ramadan will surely be remembered in the Middle East by Saudi Arabia's inflated idea of a new zealous relationship formed with the US. Following Donald Trump's Arab summit visit in May, Riyadh is reinvigorated with a new sense of importance and power, and has indulged itself on just how far warm sentiments from the Trump administration can take its new government and its struggle against Iran, an enemy of convenience that gives Saudi Arabia an important role in the region. But who needs the other more, the Saudis or the Americans? And do take a look at that. Now let's move on to the UK. Theresa May was described as a dead woman walking by George Osborne, whom she fired. The Times is talking of Theresa May staring into the abyss as she clings to power. She's pledged to lead a minority government, and she said all of this in an address which was largely described as tone deaf. Diminished Prime Minister was forced to promise Philip Hammond, the Chancellor she was planning to sack, a greater say over Brexit as she faced up to the realities of having lost her absolute majority in an election she was under no pressure to call. Having consulted the Queen, Mrs. May said that she would seek to run a minority government with our friends and allies in the DUP to provide certainty, adding, "This will allow us to come together as a country and channel our energies towards a successful Brexit deal." The tabloid Sun said succinctly she's had her chips. May fights to remain PM, the Daily Telegraph headline. Tories turn on Theresa's, the pro-conservative Daily Mail. The Times wrote, May stares into the abyss. The tabloid Sun said succinctly she's had her chips. Simon Sharp, if Theresa May thinks she can impose a hard Brexit with the help of DUP on a Britain which rejected her, she will reap the whirlwind. Indeed she will. And there came from the land of Britain a prophet whose name was Jeremy, and he cried aloud in the wilderness and said, "Behold, I bring you hope." Tongue in peace, better than New Yorker. Rather than allow the haters to alter your course, harness the energy of their fury to nourish your convictions and strengthen your resolve. Indeed. Senior DUP figures made clear they were looking at a limited confidence and supply arrangement rather than a more formal coalition. And the New Scientist has 5 things you need to know about DUP politicians and science. Paris Agreement they see as window dressing for climate chances. Don't want abortion to be as freely available in Ireland as it is in England. Buchanan told the Irish News, "I'm someone who believes in creationism and that the world was spoken into existence in 6 days by his power," adding that children had been corrupted by the teaching of evolution. So, pretty remarkable partnership, and I can't say it last. Fear, I think, in the Conservative ranks is that it can't last, just call another election. And this time Corbyn wins it big, and I think that's the risk. To ex-Twitter CEO, meeting with Trump is like drinking a bottle of gin and then waterboarding yourself. Saif al-Islam was released over the weekend. The son and one-time heir apparent of the late Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi has been released after more than 5 years in detention. 24th of October 2011 was around the time when he must have been taken into detention. I wrote a piece called Gaddafi's Body in a Freezer, and I asked, what's the message? A Saudi soldier was killed and 2 members of the security forces wounded when an explosive device went off during a patrol in the kingdom's eastern Qatif province. Look, Saudi Arabia is a black hole, but the Qatif province is in turmoil. You remember they beheaded one of the imams, a very popular one, and they only know one approach, so it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on that. Investors need a wake-up call. Treasury yields not sustainable, and this goes back to this I think that might be right, actually. I think it might be close to time to short Treasury yields, because I think the Fed could surprise the other way this time and take into mind, the weaker currency, the loosening of conditions that's engendered. Take a look at this pound chart. This is from Holger. We're last trading at 127.45. I'm looking for 125. I think the uncertainty justifies that. Relatively rare you see this form on a chart. Have a look, key level to watch for sterling above 125, interestingly enough. Let's go to the currency markets. Euro dollar 112.14, dollar index 97.19, Japanese yen 110.19, Swiss franc 0.9689, the pound, as I said, 127.45, the Australian 0.7531, that's had a good rebound in the last 2 weeks, Indian rupee 64.375, South Korean won 1125.98, Brazilian real 329.55, Egyptian pound 18.1155, South African rand 1286.44. Dollar index, I'm going to put up a 6-month chart. I'm a buyer with a tight stop on a trading basis. I think, as I described, how I'm seeing interest rates and how it will be reported, I think the market's got ahead of itself. They've flattened the curve. Everyone's expecting a big fat rally in the long-term bond yields, and I think that's actually not going to happen. Euro versus the dollar. Euro dollar 112.16. Market is bullish about the euro and pretty much taking down moves in its strides. Tesla Motors just passed BMW in market cap. It's really extraordinary. And a lot of people have lost money trying to short that. The best commodity of 2017 is one of the smallest metals markets. Palladium is up 30% in 2017, reaching a 16-year high. Gains are accelerating as demand picks up amid a shortage. The metal is up 30%, beating 33 raw materials, including lean hogs, aluminium, tracked by Bloomberg. Oil, as you know, WTI, my price target is $32 a barrel. And as I said previously, crude oil prices move exponentially in extremes. Oil headed for its third straight weekly loss. My target is 32. Where are we right now? Let me just check that. We're at 46.12. And gold, where's that? Last trading, where's that gone? Can't find it. Last trading around 1267 when I checked, but got repelled at 1300, came back down. I think we're in that sort of range. Emerging markets, a woman holds a torch while sitting next to graffiti depicting 17-year-old protester Neoma Landa, the latest fatality from the anti-government unrest. And as I've said severally, Nicolas Maduro's Venezuela is at breaking point. Other capitals, in my view, are going to run out of options. Kani Kabila, Africa report, the president has allocated ministries to former adversaries, but he has not ceded any meaningful power to the opposition. The key portfolios, interior, defense, mining, finance, oil, justice, and foreign affairs remain in the hands of regime loyalists. It seems that the future is yet to play for. In mid-May, the MP spokesman said that a referendum in an inalienable constitutional right, and noted that the people did not sign the accord. Look at the referendums which happen systematically in Europe, observes Trifon Kinmie Mulumba, a member of the MP's political bureau. We should go to the people and ask them the precise question, what do they want? Throwing his weight behind a dauphin is the alternative, but as yet, as one Western diplomat puts it, no one can think of the obvious person. Co-opted or marginalized, the opposition has hardly landed a punch on Kabila during the 6 months since the supposed conclusion of his presidency, but the hinterland is increasingly unstable and much less biddable than the incestuous domain of Kinshasa politics, which is a fair point. Kabila has control, in my opinion, of the console, but at what cost? Ivory Coast attracted $10 billion in Eurobond bids. Ivory Coast attracted almost $10 billion in bids for the Eurobond auction on Thursday in a sale that came less than a month after a 4-day mutiny by soldiers. And it's pretty incredible. African nations have benefited from rampant demand for emerging market assets this year. It's also kept the rand safe for now. Driven by investors' beliefs that the US will raise interest rates slowly, funds placed about $9 billion of orders for a Senegal bond, for example. Landlocked Ethiopia eyes role in DP World-managed Somali port. Ethiopia is in talks to acquire shares in a joint venture involving DP World that will manage a port in northern Somalia. It's interesting, and it's being Dubai World, UAE, very much looking to expand its port and military footprint simultaneously. Ratings action: Moody's Investors Services downgraded South Africa's rating to Baa3 and has assigned a negative outlook. Key drivers for the downgrade are the weakening of South Africa's institutional framework, reduced growth prospects reflecting policy uncertainty, and slower progress with structural reforms, and the continued erosion of fiscal strength due to rising public debt and contingent liabilities. So it's still just one notch above junk, isn't it? Gigabit Vaseline cartoon by Zapiro. South African all shares up 3.09% this year. Dollar versus rand, last time I looked, 12.8644. We got as high as 12.62 if I remember correctly. That's a place to try and sell it again. Dollar rand, Egyptian pound 18.1155. Nigerian all share up 23.82% year to date in a bull market, big time. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 13.51% year to date. Kenya says new challenge to ballot tender would delay voting. Kenya's election body said it may find it difficult to conduct the national vote on August 8th as scheduled if its decision to award a ballot printing contract to a Dubai-based company faces another challenge. If the choice of Al Ghurair Printing and Publishing Limited is challenged now, we will not be ready for elections. It's a better delayed election than a flawed election, said Rhino Dingo. We don't think this country can live with another flawed election. So we're still in a rather fluid situation, right up against it. Kenya will sell a 15-year Treasury bond worth $290.7 million this month. Coupon is 13.5%. It will be oversubscribed. KCB apparently is preparing to buy National Bank. Documents indicate all-share deal. KCB is up 39.13% year to date. Its market cap is 122.64 billion shillings. National Bank is down 2.777% year to date. Its market cap is 2.156 billion shillings. Nairobi all share closed at a 22-month high. It's up 12.89% this year. Safaricom closed at a fresh record high on Friday. That's up 18.79% this year. Barclays Kenya closed at a 2017 high. That's up 7.14% this year. The NSE 20 is up 8.87% so far this year. Wishing you a tremendous week, and thank you for stopping by.